Hello everyone, welcome to Impulsive Artistry. I'm artist Charles Wolf, thank you for joining me. We're going to create a little landscape painting again today using an 8x10 inch canvas board. There you see my palette for today: Titanium White, Cadmium Yellow, Cadmium Red, Phthalo Blue, and Mars Black. There is also a materials list for you all the things I used to create this piece. Note the brushes: angle brush, a bright brush, and a liner brush later on. Starting today with the angle brush, we're going to use this brush for the majority of this piece. I'm going to begin by creating this muted sky blue color. I create the color by combining together Phthalo Blue, Titanium White, a touch of the Cadmium Red, and just a dash of that Mars Black. You can see that on the canvas board I have drawn in already the main structural formations for this painting. I've marked out and blocked out my sky. I have my clouds there. I know where the mountains are going to go, and I've marked out the ridge line for that. I've set my horizon line about 2/3 of the way up at a slight angle because of the way the mountains are kind of moving towards the viewer. And then I've created a single point perspective, a 1-point perspective road coming out towards the viewer. And that road, you can see the two main lines of that road are converging. Whenever you have two parallel lines going away from the viewer, they're always converging to give that three-dimensional perspective. I've also marked out where there's a field on the left-hand side, as well as a big tree that you can't quite see here on the camera, but there's going to be a big tree on the right-hand side of this composition. I've started to add in layers of white, being very liberal with the paint and not being too careful, just kind of slapping it on there, to be honest. Just filling in the areas of white that I've left blank based on my sketching. This painting is called Vermont Trail and is actually based on a photograph that a good friend of mine took. They actually live in Vermont, and they took this on a recent trip, cycling around some of the beautiful nature and scenery of Vermont, getting to enjoy all of that. I'm using this photograph today as just a loose inspiration. It's not a very detailed version of the photograph. I'm not trying to recreate the photograph. I'm just trying to get the impression of it. I tend to paint things rather loosely. Use the photograph for things like general composition but not exact, the colors but not exact. Just try to get the feeling of the image and still make it look like a painting. Oftentimes artists spend a lot of time really trying to perfect every little detail, and they create these beautiful photorealistic works, and I'm not by any means knocking that. That's amazing that they can do that, but I myself don't have the patience for that sort of thing, and I prefer to move quickly and loosely, and that's just the style that I was taught in college when I was studying painting. Just go fast, go loose, and the example my teacher always would give would be, think of it like jazz, don't think of it like it's a very structured classical piece. That kind of works. There's a certain amount of structure to jazz too, but it has this sort of freeness, and I think that's a good example of what we're going for today. Very free, very loose wrist, and just quickly put it on there. I apologize for that band-aid on my finger. I accidentally cut myself when I was creating my cardboard cutout, my palette there. So be very careful if you're using an X-Acto knife like I was. Don't cut yourself, be careful. Those are sharp, and I slipped and I cut my finger a little bit, so just be careful when you're doing that. Just bringing in more and more of the white. I put in a little bit of a gray contrast color so you can see some of the shadows on these clouds. And now I'm just dabbing back over, not covering up the dark, but just around it with the pure pigment of white. Now I'm going to create a nice seafoam green color: Phthalo Blue, Cadmium Yellow, Titanium White, and a touch of the Mars Black. That Phthalo Blue is quite a deep blue, great color for mixing these sort of tones. A little bit of that Cadmium Yellow will make it more green, the white will lighten it up, the touch of the black will mute it a little bit. But more of the blue and yellow, give a little bit of red in there too, why not? But more of the blue and yellow for sure, and then a good deal of this white. And we'll bring that in, and this is the top of my mountains here. The Vermont mountains have a bluish tinge to them. They can sometimes look purple in the right light, but today we're going to go for something a little bit more realistic, and they actually have this kind of green feel to them because they're covered in trees. And so you'll want to have some of that as well. And there's a little bit of yellow peeking through, and we'll add that in too. First put the line in where you want them, these mountains to be, and then you want to brush them up into the white, and that will lighten them automatically. I'll even add a little more white here to get that effect enhanced. Interplaying the darker blue and the more pure blue with that greener color. And we'll enhance that, like I said, in a few moments with more of the yellow. But if I brush up into that blue a little bit, you'll get more of a haze on the top of the mountains, which immediately gives them a sense of depth and realism, because in the distance things become more blue, but they also get a little more hazy. They become desaturated and have more white. Adding some more cadmium yellow. Okay, bringing in a few hints of yellow here and there. And just by playing this in automatically, we get all kinds of wonderful things happening, and we get a lot more details without really doing too much. Dark green, cadmium yellow, phthalo blue, maybe a touch of the black, and we'll add a little bit of the white to this as well, just to soften it very slightly. A lot more black here, really darken this up. Get this nice muted color in the distance. And we'll bring in another layer of these close hills in front of these mountains. Gonna add some more white now. Just make it a little bit lighter. It's a little bit too intense, and I want it to blend, especially as we get farther away, into the mountains behind. Change the direction of your brush if you want to create a tree, and we'll just start to dab the basic shape of this here. We'll better define this later on, but for now we'll just put a placeholder of, hey, there's a tree here, don't forget. And then as it dries, you can always layer over. It's one of the great things about acrylic painting, I've said this before, I'll say it again, is it's very forgiving. You can always change things. So if you're not liking how something's looking, not a problem. Let it dry, and you can very, very easily simply cover it over with more paint. Again, I'm just sort of following a lot of my structural lines, making sure I'm keeping the proportions and keeping the basic composition intact. Not worrying if I get a little bit off though. We can always adjust things and fix things as we go. Touch more of the black here, and it's gotten a little bit lighter as some of the white has hit that brush. There's less paint on it as well, so maybe some of the canvas is showing through as well. If you want to thin out your paint and let more of the canvas show through, all you can do is just grab a little bit of water, and that's a great way to thin the paint out if you're using acrylic paints, mind you. If you want to do the same thing with oil paint, well, you better use something like linseed oil or some white spirits, something like that. Here's some more of the Mars Black and the Cadmium Yellow. And there might be a little bit of blue in there too, but mostly we're adding in more yellow and black to our green mixture. Just trying to make this a little bit more yellow. And yellow is a hotter color and more heat to it than the distant blue, and that'll bring the whole thing forward in space. Things usually get hotter closer to you, and they get more blue, like I said, in the distance. If I wanted that secondary hill, this front hill, to be farther away, I'd add more blue. If I want it to be closer to us, like it is in the photograph, well then I'm going to add more yellow and more red to it, and that'll bring it forward much more. If it was fall, I would definitely add oranges. That would bring it really forward, and reds, but beautiful summertime photo that I'm working from, I'm not going to do that because it would look like the wrong season. I'm just blocking in here some basic color and basic shapes. I'm gonna have to go back over that a good deal to get it to look more realistic. Light green, cadmium yellow, titanium white, and just a touch, of the phthalo blue. Nice light green color, and we'll bring in this field here. These are just simple single direction strokes, cutting across and just cleaning up that bottom edge. just like that. We get a beautiful field happening. Just trying to define where one thing happens and the next thing begins. And we'll just start to fill in the space, basically. All the lines kind of converging onto that one point in the distance. I'm leaving a little bit of the white of the canvas showing, as I'm going to put some brown in there, as it's a field that has some dirt showing. It's not all green. Having a little brown here and there never hurts and adds a lot to the realism of the composition. More white here, just making it lighter, as the sun is shining pretty brightly through here. We're going to add a lot of white to this piece just because it is like the middle of the day, and if you look at the trees in the middle of the day, if it's not super cloudy, like it's partly cloudy here, but if it's not super cloudy, there's going to be a lot of flecks of white shining off of leaves and things like that. So we'll add that in as we go. Here's the dark brown mix I was talking about. To make brown, it's very easy. Just mix all your primary colors, red, yellow, and blue. And we're going to make it a little bit darker by adding a touch of the black. But brown is an easy color to make. Just mix basically everything together. Pretty easy. Angle brush is perfect for doing all kinds of just scrubby things, for little details things. And I'm using, basically up to this point, only one brush. Now I'm pushing the red here, and the reason why I'm doing that is because I'm thinking about the complementary colors. And red and green are complements. The green is made by mixing yellow and blue, and red is the opposite. Red is the primary color that was not used to make green, and so when you put green and red next to each other, the whole thing sort of shimmers, and it's a really nice effect. So I'm adding in that red here so that it pops and becomes more forward in the composition. Again, heat brings the viewer's eye forward and it adds to the depth, so putting some red there strongly really pulls the whole thing forward into space, and you can see how easily that happens. Adding a little more white, and this is the beginning of adding in more of the white. Now it's easy to overdo this, so you might want to make sure you're grounding it with some darker, purer colors underneath. It's okay to have flecks of white on top, but if you don't have the darker color, it'll look kind of funny and it'll make your painting look a little bit flat and boring. So if you overuse the white, which I may be doing here, honestly, I might be using a little bit too much white for a proper composition. I might need to back it off, to be honest. But if you're going to do this, just be careful with how much white there is. You use too much white in everything, it can make it kind of flat and muted, so be careful about that. You don't want your pieces to look boring, you want them to be colorful. But it's realistic also to have a lot of white during this time of day, so you have to kind of balance that. Are you going to go for realism, or are you going to go for something that looks a little bit more appealing but is less realistic? It's a hard balance to find in painting. Lots of paint here with that round brush. Great brush for doing this. And it's a clean brush, a very clean brush. Even when I clean my brushes off, I may not be cleaning them perfectly, and so getting a new brush sometimes is a great way to ensure that you're going to get a cleaner, purer pigment. Back to my green mix, I've added a touch of water to it just to make it run and fill in, and it'll also make it a little bit lighter. Add some more yellow to that. And again, adding in heat will bring it closer to the front. Touch of the black as well. Yellow and black, of course, make a nice olive green color, and we need that to ground this white. If it's just too much white, it won't look as good. We need to have definitely some hues of green. I think maybe better than using this yellow olive green would be to actually use some of the phthalo blue and yellow mixture, a little bit darker. I think that would ground it even better. The other thing would be to do is to wait a little bit longer for this white paint to actually dry and then layer over the darker colors. I think it would look better than blending into it like I am here. I just get impatient and start going on to the next step. I could have worked on the right hand side a bit more and then come back, and that might have saved me some trouble. But sometimes in the moment you're just sort of taking action and you just sort of forget about waiting. So, word of advice, a little tip, be patient. More patient than I am, but I'm also trying to get these paintings done as quickly as I can because I want to keep these lessons relatively brief, as I know no one wants to sit here for 2 hours and watch me paint, for the most part. A few people maybe, but most people probably don't have 2 hours to sit and watch someone paint. It's a little bit too long, so We're going to try to do these fast and quick and loose and in a beautiful impressionistic way. More of the green on the right hand side. At this point, I'm just filling in the space. Now you can see I've sort of lost the edges of my path, and they're getting grown over by these bushes and things, and that's okay, and that looks fine, and maybe looks more natural and realistic. But if you want them to be sharp edges, which is closer to how the photograph looks, you can definitely do that pretty easily. You're just bringing in some of that gray paint over top and pulling in a straight diagonal pretty easily. Okay, here is some darker green. Added some phthalo blue to that for sure. The right hand side forward a little bit more intense as well with the colors. Darker and more shadowed on this right hand side because of the clouds. And then on the left is where the sun is breaking through, and so everything's a little bit lighter and more white added. Colors can add a lot to a painting and define sort of how they feel. Bluer color will look more like shadow. Hotter colors like yellow and red make things look like they're more in pure sunlight. Adding some strokes here, some thin strokes with my liner brush, and it looks okay. Eventually just forget the little strokes and just kind of scumble over, lightly mute this red. Grabbing a very large bright brush here, a new brush, so I get pure white pigment, and I'm just kind of splotching on some beautiful flowers that are growing on the side. Adding a little white to this tree is not a bad idea because there is going to be a lot of white reflecting in these branches. You can see how the green on the bottom of that left-hand side of the road really makes the white seem more grounded. Here's some titanium white, some phthalo blue, and some Mars black, of course, to make gray, a bluish gray color, and this will be our path for today. Adding more of the white, and we'll just fill in this space. Back to my angle brush, by the way. Adding a touch of red and black and a little more blue there. Make it a little bit more of a purple color. Again, adding heat to this to bring it forward. And just starting to blend the two sides together. And it's that easy, and suddenly you have a beautiful landscape happening right on the canvas. I hope if you've never painted before that you grab a brush, grab some acrylic paints. They're not very expensive to buy. These are just basic ones. I usually just buy what's on sale, to be honest with you, so just get whatever and start painting. 5 colors there, red, yellow, blue, white, and black. Most of my paintings on this channel only use 5 colors, sometimes 6. If I add a little bit of brown, umber is good, but that's just a shortcut really. You only need 5, and you can create just absolutely beautiful pieces very simply and very easily. Acrylic painting is so forgiving, it's so easy to use. You can always adjust and change things as you go. It's a fantastic hobby. It's a lot of fun, so grab some brushes, grab some paint, and join me each and every week as I create another painting for you all. Right now, I'm uploading basically 2 paintings a month. I'll do a time-lapse version for the more casual viewer who wants just to enjoy the painting process but doesn't want to learn how to do it. And then I usually release every other week a lesson video right now that sort of demonstrates all the basic components of what I'm doing, and I explain a little bit more in detail, like I did today, how I'm approaching this painting. I do all kinds of stuff on this channel, all kinds of different paintings, so I'm not stuck to like any one style or motif. I'll do landscapes, I do abstracts, always mixing it up, always changing it, and just sort of based on what I want to paint that week. I think what happened was I used too big of a brush. I think I should have used a smaller brush. I think it's just a little bit too bold and got a little heavy-handed here. Sort of lost my path a little bit, and I ended up just not getting a nice textured feel. It was just too bold. So I'm going to come back in with more of the yellow. Again, trying to heat and lighten up the white. I just feel like it's too intense right now. We want to make it more blended for sure. Gonna grab some more of the white, bring that back in, but you see the smaller brush adds a lot more detail and texture changes, and that's gonna look a lot more interesting. The bigger brush I used just wasn't quite the stuff. A little bit too big. But that's part of painting, is you just try something and you go, that didn't look quite right. I'll adjust it here, I'll adjust it there, and before you know it, you're back to how it should look. Okay, grabbing some more white, another angle brush. Few little details in the distance. A little bit too much, we'll soften that again, adding a little more green mix in the background. Okay, I went a little too heavy on the left-hand side. I'm going to fix my path. My path needs to be widening out to the left and kind of cutting across more of the canvas, and so I'm going to fix that right now by just dabbing off with the paper towel the excess paint, and then grabbing some more of the green. We'll put it back in a little bit, and then we'll paint over with the gray, and that'll look just fine. Sometimes you adjust things, and like I said, it doesn't quite look how you want, so just make some changes. No big deal. Okay, more white, just to soften the green here, blend it together a little bit more. That looks good. Just in a few spots here and there. Back to my gray mix with the white, clean brush. And just pull it sharply upwards, trying to calm down that green on the left-hand corner there. A little more white, a little more gray, and just cover that over. Yeah, that looks good. And that's basically it. Thank you so much for watching. Appreciate it. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Leave me a like if you enjoyed the video, and hit the notification bell if you would like notifications each and every time that I upload a new painting. Thanks so much for watching. Have a fantastic day.